Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm really pleased that you can be joining us for the fifth webinar in Metrics Lab's Understanding the New Normal series. My name is Richard McLeod. I'm a Senior Client and Strategy Director for Metrics Lab based here in the UK. And I'm joined today by Andy Sonterhoods, a member of our global team based in the Netherlands. As ever, we'll be presenting for around 30 minutes or so. So that should leave 5 or 10 minutes at the end for some Q&A. So if any questions do come to mind as we run through the session, please pop them into the questions box, which you should find in the tab on the right-hand side of your page. And we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end. Also worth me just quickly saying that we will be sending a copy of this report to everyone following the session. Our focus for this programme is to continue to monitor a number of core and consistent themes that really are designed to help us to monitor that progress along the road to recovery. But at the same time, we are always trying to be agile. We're looking to focus on new areas as the situation evolves and new client questions emerge. So today, really the big focus for us is that second topic of restricted living 2.0. So this is a phrase that we've coined to capture the dramatic shift in mindset that we're seeing versus how people were feeling maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And then this is in the context of what we see as a very protracted, very volatile period of uncertainty. This mindset shift is also having significant implications for brands and the role that they can and should be playing. So that really is a big focus for us today. And then in the final chapter, we'll be taking a look at the positive difference that brands can make as people really start to brace themselves for this long road ahead. I won't dwell for too long on the method or the approach. There were just a couple of points I wanted to draw your attention to. So first of all, the information that we're sharing today was collected in August. Secondly, it's very important to us that we are providing a holistic learning programme. So that means that we're bringing together survey data from our tracking study, and we're piecing that together with social insights, trusted external data sources, and also inspiring brand case studies. That rounded 360 perspective we feel is really useful, really important, because it helps us to understand and monitor what people are feeling, how they're behaving, but also it allows us to identify the opportunities for brands to intersect and make a difference. We're covering 17 markets, so that gives us good geographical coverage around the world, but also a real range of countries where the pandemic is at very, very different life stages. So those comparisons that we make across different countries that you'll see throughout the analysis, they give us a real sense of how the situation could potentially evolve over time. So now I'll head into the findings, and we'll start with a perspective around how far from normality people think that we are. This is a really core metric for us. It's something that we track and monitor on a monthly basis, and we tend to use it as an important gauge of overall consumer sentiment and confidence. In the last couple of months, we have been leveraging this framework that helps us to plot our progress on the road towards the new normal. We know that the situation around the world continues to be incredibly fragmented. It's changing very quickly all the time. And it's also increasingly clear that our progress towards the new normal is volatile, non-linear and protracted. And currently, we know that many countries around the world continue to be in this quite protracted, restricted living phase. And we are still seeing a number of examples of localized setbacks disrupting our progress along the way. So with no real clear end in sight for consumers, we are starting to see mindset shift versus where they were at the very beginning of this restricted living phase. So now we believe more than ever that it really is crucial for businesses to really keep their finger on the pulse of this changing situation within each country. Really try to identify how that's influencing consumer attitudes and behaviours, and then businesses should be setting themselves up to be agile to adapt those strategies accordingly. This volatility is very much reflected in this month's return to normal tracking. So this is where we ask people how far from normality they think they are. It's a chart that we tend to read from left to right. So the closer to the right-hand side a country flag is, the closer to normality the people in that country feel they already are. Now, August is actually the second month where that global average has not increased. So if we can compare that with perhaps May and June, in those 2 months we were seeing steady and positive progress. We saw a 6 percentage point increase in that return to normal tracking in both of those months. But in July and August, that progress has very clearly stagnated. So this is really significant. This provides clear evidence that people are losing confidence that we're on the right track. Of course, though, the situation around the world remains fragmented. We do continue to see, for example, a regional divide. Asian countries, for example, are typically more confident about that return to normality. And that contrasts quite sharply with the US, for example. So the US is a country where currently the population is feeling further and further away from normality each month. That news comes as the number of US cases recently passed 6 million. And of course, we do continue to see quite wide criticism for how the crisis has been handled by the government in the US. And at the same time, we do continue to see a clear and growing realism from people that we have a long road to recovery ahead of us. So when we started this programme back in April, we found that half of people globally felt there would be a return to normality within 3 months. Now, clearly that early optimism was misplaced, and that figure has now dropped to 23% of people globally. What we are now seeing is a significant increase in the proportion of people who believe that that return to normal will happen or will take at least 10 months. So with no clear end in sight for consumers, we are therefore starting to see quite significant changes in that consumer mindset and those attitudes and behaviours. This has really significant implications for businesses. It's increasingly clear that businesses can't simply wait passively for that return to normal. Also, we're seeing a need to move beyond temporary fixes and short-term strategies, and for businesses now they need to develop longer-term strategies for coping with this prolonged and volatile period of uncertainty. With this context in mind, in August, for the first time, we've coined this phrase of restricted living 2.0. So this is a phrase that is designed to capture the idea that people's mindset and approach is transforming very, very quickly versus where it was perhaps in April or May, when the pandemic had very first started to disrupt our lifestyles and routines. And we're now seeing that the proportion of people believing that there will be a swift return to normality has halved. So there is this growing acceptance of a long road ahead. But also at the same time, we are now seeing significant changes in how people are feeling. So at the start of the pandemic, of course, people were cautious. So we did see high levels of caution and anxiety. But at the same time, there were high degrees of hope. So people were hopeful about this swift recovery. That hope has now receded and it's being replaced by high levels of tiredness and weariness. So in this new phase of the pandemic that we're entering, we are now faced with a cautious consumer, a consumer that lacks confidence in that return to normality, and also a consumer that is increasingly weary and frustrated with the situation. So of course, this has major implications for the brands, for the role that brands can and should be playing. So in this period of early optimism back in April, people were facing the situation with a certain degree of novelty and curiosity. It was a period that was defined by consumer creativity. People were looking to make the most of the time that they were being given. People were experimenting with things like dalgona coffees and quarantinis. And there were significant opportunities for brands to fuel that creativity and to provide fun and inspiration. Fast forward to August and restricted living 2.0, and we now have a cautious consumer whose main priority really is to navigate these challenges more easily and more safely. So in that context, of course, the brand role is entirely different. Brands should be looking to relieve consumer caution and anxiety, but also looking to find ways to make people's lives easier. So that context is really important as we head into the next chapter. Andy's going to talk you through how needs are changing in a little bit more detail in this new era of the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Rich. So, as the summer is coming to an end, at least here in the Netherlands, it's clear that the initial reaction to COVID-19 is over too. And consumers and businesses need to start looking at this situation with a, let's say, a longer term view. So in this next chapter, we will share our learning and point of view on the changing needs of consumers and what this likely means for brands as we continue to deal with the pandemic. So this restricted living 2.0 phase brings new challenges to the consumer. So first of all, they are challenged in the pursuit of normalcy, as there's a huge amount of caution and anxiety that exists in everyday life. So keeping safe and going about everyday activities is key, and hygiene is absolutely critical. Secondly, consumers need to help to make even the simplest activities easier and less stressful. So anything brands can do to offer smart and convenient solutions will be very much appreciated. So let's kick off with the cautious consumer and the pursuit to normality. So this pursuit is is a hard one, and there's a real tension that exists in everyday life. So we noticed that over 8 out of 10 consumers have real concerns in how other people are behaving today in helping address this crisis. And perhaps this is a sense that still not everyone is in this together. And this is a familiar theme that we've seen through the last 5 months in our new normal program. And we've called this earlier the we versus me existence. So confidence concerns are exacerbated by a feeling that not everyone is doing their part, and also not everyone is wearing a face mask when going outside. So if you take a look at this chart uh, looks at how confident consumers are in getting back to everyday activities. And confidence remains very fragile, especially for those activities which you may see on the left-hand side. So like attending concerts, going to cultural events, traveling to a new country, or attending sporting events. And even going to a pub or going to a bar is a worry to many people, despite lifting of restrictions in several markets. So basically, this is still an activity that people don't feel very comfortable. And on the right-hand side, you may notice that going back to work is higher up the confidence scale, but we also notice that there is a clear drop in how confident the workplace may actually be. And we see this theme continuing when it comes to transportation. Confidence in my transport, like your private car, is very high. But at the same time, we see that confidence in public transport, like train, airplane, metro, or buses, is very low. And even traveling in rideshare apps lacks the confidence of cautious consumers. So it's clear that businesses and brands need to take a long, hard look in how they address these ongoing concerns as the consumer journeys on in this pursuit of normalcy. So what is holding back the cautious consumer from resuming some of their much loved activities? Well, two main themes come through very clear. First of all, the feeling that it's simply not safe enough to do a certain activity. And secondly, with all the restrictions in place, that the activity or the experience itself is simply not enjoyable. So on the safety front, we notice that travel, restaurants, and going to the cinema are frequently mentioned, while as enjoying activities is concerned, things like everyday shopping or simply being outside around others are a major concern to many people. So how can brands and businesses demonstrate that they are doing everything they can to ensure safety, and how can they start to inspire confidence? So hygiene transparency is crucial, and this forces brands to communicate in a tangible and very credible way. We have here an example of Hilton Hotels and many other hotel brands for that matter. Hilton Hotels is actively showcasing their Clean Stay program. So they are performing disinfection of frequently touched items like light switches, door handles, etc. But that's not enough. It's more importantly as a way to demonstrate that Hilton takes this program very seriously, and therefore they used the Lysol brand. So they used the sanitizer brand to build extra confidence with guests. And we think that brand partnerships like this will continue to emerge in the coming months. Rideshare app Uber follows a no mask, no ride policy. And both Uber drivers and clients are required to wear face masks during their trips. And this new rule has a central role in Uber's global communication. On the right-hand side, Asda has revealed it is the first UK supermarket to trial a trolley wash facility, as the retailer looks for a tangible way and also an innovative way to demonstrate safety and also to inspire confidence to their audience. So these kind of contactless and low touch activities are here to stay. And looking even at everyday shopping, it has real and long-lasting implications for shopping behaviors, for packaging, but also for brand visibility in the future. McKinsey is reporting that 79% of consumers intend to continue or to increase their usage of self-checkout in retail after COVID-19. And we see across all categories a massive adoption of online shopping. So brands will need to consider new packaging optimizations for the delivery side of the equation, as today packaging has largely been optimized for the aisle. And we also notice that brands also have to battle for attention and distinction on small screens versus the aisle. Now we are going to focus on the second key theme that consumers face and that brands and businesses need to adapt to. So consumers are looking for help to make even the simplest activities easier and less stressful. They want to make smart and informed decisions so they can continue to do their best to look after themselves and their loved ones. We see consumer tensions emerging in restricted living 2.0. And we see this on three levels. First, consumers are getting more and more strained. External sources like the World Health Organization and the CDC in the USA, those organizations are warning that the psychosocial crisis has become its own pandemic. The numbers of people who feel depressed are on the rise. Secondly, people are forced to prepare more meals for more people, and this creates tension in the kitchen, which we know is already being used for much more than cooking these days. So in many households, the kitchen also functions as part-time office or even part-time school. Thirdly, consumer tension exists in the desire to eat more healthy, but this is being challenged by the onset of the tired and weary consumer in restricted living 2.0. So brands need to continue to support. That is their way. That is a way they can help consumers. And we believe they need to continue to support the desire for consumers to be their best self, but also offer in caring and convenient ways. So let's look another time at cooking as an example of this. With time on their hands and going to restaurants a concern, we see high levels of consumers who are actively preparing meals using scratch-based cooking methods. At the same time, there is a desire for convenience while they are ordering pickup meals or buying ready-made meals or takeaway meals. So we see that there are several ways brands can respond to this. So brands can help consumers make smarter decisions on health and well-being. So they can help with menu planning, with healthy shortcuts, let's say providing access to inspiring branded content. Those are all ways to help consumers make smarter decisions. What also is key in this is simplifying the purchase and usage journey. So remember that example that we presented earlier of the shopper trolley wash at Asda in the UK. And all this can go a long way to ease the burden. So let's stay on this topic of food. And even here, consumer tension exists in even very simple food choices. So we've showcased there's a desire for freshness and to be the best you can be for you and for your family. While on the other hand, convenience and comfort at affordable prices also play their role. So we noticed that HelloFresh, a meal kit delivery brand, has jumped its sales in the second quarter. And consumers typically are making up to 7 meals, evening meals a week, compared to just 4 pre-COVID. And average orders are also increasing with HelloFresh, while marketing costs have fallen as consumers are seeking out the service on their own. At the same time, a group of Americans are forced to newly prioritize making ends meet when they cook, and they prioritize getting enough basic nutrition. This is nicely illustrated with strong sales results for Spam, a brand of canned chopped meat. Consumers are also seeking out any way they can to protect themselves from coronavirus. And the market for immunity supplements and vitamins has grown during the pandemic. And this pandemic is also stimulating more consumer demand for sleeping remedies in a way to cope with growing stress, with depression and sleep deprivation. So our final example comes from our social stream. And this is another exciting example. This is about mindful snacking. And this example comes from Non-the-Leads. And mindful snacking is a way to help consumers with their daily rituals and to give them a sense of daily satisfaction in a healthy and convenient way. So consumers choose their snacks based not just on taste and enjoyment, which are of course very important, but also on trust in nutritional value. And by placing this nutritional information at the front of packaging, along with guidance on portion control, the company is allowing the consumer to make an informed and smart decision. So in this chapter, we've looked at how this restricted living 2.0 phase brings these new challenges to the consumers in the pursuit of normalcy, but also the need for brands and businesses to help consumers make everyday life just a little bit easier. So I'm now handing back to Rich, who will build on this from a long-term brand perspective.
Thank you, Andy. Absolutely. In our final chapter, we'll be exploring how brands can really step up to play a positive and leading role as people continue to struggle with this restricted living 2.0 phase. So it's worth me starting by just quickly reiterating that we do continue to see significant opportunities for brands to play a positive role during this crisis. That's a view that's very clearly shared by consumers, and actually it's something that hasn't changed since the very first weeks of the pandemic. So we can see that 3/4 of people believe that businesses should be focusing their resources on helping people, and also a similar proportion believing that businesses should be aiming to make a positive impact. So we do see a real license from consumers for brands to play a role in shaping this phase of the pandemic and also helping people to navigate the crisis. And what we are seeing very clearly is that there are many ways that brands can do that. So of course, big businesses can make a significant difference at a mass scale or a societal level. That's something that Unilever, for example, has done admirably by contributing more than 100 million euros in aid to continue helping hard-hit communities, suppliers and employees. And also similarly, we've seen from Vodafone that they've been providing free and unlimited data for NHS and care workers, as well as a significant number of vulnerable customers. But it's also very evident that consumers do really appreciate and value more personal help. and that's something that Dixie has recognised. So Dixie is a US-based paper products business. They've recognised the increasing stress that people are under due to COVID-19, and therefore they ran a competition where people could enter, explain the extra pressure and extra stress that they're under due to COVID-19, and then Dixie would offer for the winners to take something off their plate to make their lives easier or less stressful. This was a campaign that was really positively received. It enjoyed lots of social engagement, and really it's a great example of the different ways that brands can make a positive difference to consumers. Brands also have an opportunity to make a positive difference on this more personal level when it comes to helping people to prepare for key moments of celebration during this new phase of the pandemic. So if we take Christmas as an example, people are already wondering what Christmas will be like and how it's going to be disrupted. So we can see in Google Trends, for example, that people are increasingly searching for this term COVID Christmas. Actually, believe it or not, this was something that started to pick up around March, April time, right at the beginning of the pandemic. But then we have seen a real acceleration of that trend again in recent weeks. Also on Twitter, we can see lots of people worrying about the festive season. That's a growing and a trending topic across lots of different social media platforms. And already we can see that businesses are starting to adapt. They're creating new types of decorations and items that really acknowledge this new normal Christmas that's already on the horizon for lots of consumers. So in this context where we know that lots of people are already concerned that along this long road to recovery, a number of these key moments of celebration are likely to be disrupted or perhaps not even be possible at all, that means there is a big opportunity for brands to reimagine these events, help people to prepare, and help people to look forward to these key moments of celebration with more positivity and more hope. Hershey provides a really instructive example in the way that they've been adapting and preparing for this year's Halloween season. So first of all, Hershey is expecting that consumers are going to want to stock up early on Halloween products. So getting prepared much earlier than maybe they would do in previous years. So in preparation for that, Hershey has been partnering very, very closely with retailers to ensure that their products are on the shop floor as soon as possible. Secondly, Hershey is anticipating that the traditional trick-or-treat occasion in many cases is likely to be replaced by an in-home treat for me or candy bowl celebration moment, and therefore there's been a real shift in product focus towards products that are more appropriate for those in-home occasions. And finally, quite rightly, Hershey is expecting there to be significant geographic differences in the situation, an expectation that those situations are likely to change very, very quickly over time, and therefore local guidelines, local restrictions are likely to change quite quickly as well. Therefore, Hershey is planning for week-to-week adjustments in the digital media strategy for the Halloween campaign at that local level to account for those local and very fast-moving changes. So we know that this road to recovery is likely to be long-lasting. That means that many of these key moments of celebration over the next 6 to 12 months are unfortunately likely to be disrupted. But that does mean that there is this opportunity for businesses to plan ahead and help consumers to make their own preparations and to adapt for those coming moments of celebration. So we want to wrap up, therefore, with some key themes and implications for brands. First of all, it's very, very clear now, I think, after 2 months of seeing this data, that our progress towards the new normal has stalled or stagnated. We do have this long road to recovery ahead of us, and this is having significant implications on the consumer mindset. Also, that means there is this growing need for businesses to move beyond temporary fixes and short-term strategies and to start to develop those longer-term strategies for coping with this really quite prolonged period of uncertainty. We know that people are increasingly cautious and wary. That means there is a need for businesses to be reassuring that hygiene standards are being met, but that reassurance needs to be much more tangible, visible, and transparent than ever before. We see this rising tension as restricted living continues to run on and on. People do want to be healthy, but at the same time, they are seeking more convenient solutions that make life easier. There is a clear theme emerging where businesses are taking strong, tangible steps to demonstrate that they are taking the concerns of the cautious consumer very seriously. And in that context, we can expect new and different brand partnerships to arise. And finally, in the long run ahead, we can expect that many different moments of celebration, from Halloween all the way through to Chinese New Year and beyond, we can expect those to be disrupted. And that means there is this opportunity for businesses to creatively reimagine and help people to navigate these upcoming moments of celebration. So specifically, what are the actions that brands should be taking? Well, first of all, in this context, that it is increasingly clear that people need help in navigating restricted living 2.0 more easily and more safely. First of all, brands should be looking to simplify the purchase and usage journey, but also brands should be seeking ways to demonstrate that they are meeting hygiene standards in more tangible, transparent ways. There is also this opportunity to help people navigate tensions. So, for example, making healthy choices more smartly and more conveniently. We also see an opportunity for businesses to actively seek new types of brand partnership that make your customers' lives easier and better. And finally, now really is the time to start preparing for those disrupted moments of celebration. Consider how you can reimagine these moments in a way that helps people to adapt and helps people to enjoy. So I think now is a good moment to pause and take some of the questions that have been coming through and you guys have been posting for us. Thank you to everyone who's been posting a question. Quite a few have come in this time, which is really good to see. The first question relates to our return to normal tracking and specifically Italy. So I will take the first question. So this question really states that Italy stood out on that back to normal tracking. Italy seems to be doing better than many other European countries. So do we have any thoughts on this? Can we expand on this? So I'll take this first question and thanks for posing that one. And yes, it is something that we noticed in our own analysis. It's something that we've been talking about over the last week or two. Italy, of course, was one of the countries that was hit really hard at the start of the pandemic. Arguably, along with Spain, Italy was potentially the epicenter of the pandemic in Europe for a number of weeks in those early stages of the pandemic. But over the past few months, we have seen that consumer confidence in Italy has been steadily improving. It's been progressing. And I think one thing that's quite interesting about Italy is that they did open up quite cautiously. The Prime Minister in Italy has been quite widely applauded for following the science and not playing to the politics of popularity, if you like. And also, I think the messaging that came out of the Italian government was quite simple, quite single-minded, quite clear. And I think all of this is coming together just to reinforce that confidence that we are now seeing in the Italian consumer. And that is helping, I think, to deliver this sense of closeness to normality that we are seeing in Italy ahead of some other countries in the region. So that's been really pleasing to see. Okay, so the second question we have relates to this phrase of restricted living 2.0. So Andy, I will pose this question to you if that's okay. The question really is commenting that restricted living 2.0 is a unique take. Can you expand a bit more on this and what it might mean in the longer term for brands?
Okay, well, I'm glad you bring up this topic. I think we clearly see that the situation has changed. So if you take a step back and go back in time a couple of months, we noticed there was there was hope. There was sometimes even a careless consumer who was optimistic that it would only be for the short term. But this has all changed to a more, let's say, cautious consumer, more weary, and even more tired. So that offers an opportunity for brands to help, but especially things like simplifying the purchase and usage journey, and we showed a couple of examples of that. I think that is key to brands to be helpful to consumers, but also demonstrating hygiene. So hygiene is more than a hygiene factor. Demonstrating hygiene in a tangible way. That's another one. And I think brand partnerships are also very interesting to mention here. So we mentioned the partnership between Lifestyle and the Hilton Hotel, but there's much more going on these days, and I think also brand partnerships are one of the opportunities to look out for brands.
Thanks very much, Andy. I think we have time perhaps just for one more question, and I've seen an interesting question relating to COVID Christmas. So I'll take the last question if that's okay. So this person is saying that we've only just got through summer, so I can't believe you're talking about COVID Christmas already. So apologies for that. Apologies for turning your attention to Christmas already. So the question is really, are consumers really already starting to talk about this and plan for COVID Christmas? So thanks for that question. Yeah, it has been really interesting to see this theme start to emerge. And the answer is yes, consumers are already starting to talk about a COVID Christmas. And actually, unbelievably, that did start all the way back in March, April. It was one of the first things that people turned their attention to when the pandemic started to disrupt our lifestyles and routines. But I think as we've come out of summer, we have seen a real acceleration of that trend of people looking towards Christmas and wondering what it will be like. I think consumers really do realise now that we are in this for the long haul. They're starting to make longer term plans and starting to reimagine what these different moments of celebration like Christmas are going to be like, because they do really signpost our year, these moments, and people are quite worried about how they're going to be affected. And I think that also touches on a point that we made earlier, which is it's also really important for brands and businesses to be thinking the same way. I think the time for temporary fixes, short-term strategies has now passed. It's quite clear that this prolonged period of uncertainty that we're calling restricted living 2.0, unfortunately, is going to be with us for a considerable period of time, and businesses need longer term strategies for how they're going to cope with that. And I think the brands that can really get a head start in helping people to adapt, helping people to prepare for these moments of celebration, to reimagine what different Christmas rituals might look like in a disrupted COVID Christmas, those are the brands that are primed for success. Those are the brands that are really going to resonate with consumers. So we would urge any brand, any business that has a role to play during these different moments, really to start thinking about how they can help people to adapt, to prepare, and to look forward to these moments. Okay, so I think that's probably all the time we have for questions. Apologies to anyone whose questions we didn't have the chance to answer. As I say, we did have quite a few questions this time, so I'm sure there'll be a number of you. We will endeavour to send a written response to your questions as soon as we can, so do look out for that. In the last couple of minutes, though, I would like to take the opportunity just to very, very quickly remind you all that we are still striving to build this programme around our clients' key business questions. So this approach really of crowdsourcing these hot topics from our clients, that's what has helped us to identify some of the key topics that we've addressed in some of our recent webinars. So things like the role of sustainability during the crisis, our point of view on how to get welcome back advertising right. These are all topics that were generated by conversations we've been having with our clients around the world. So in that spirit, your Metrics Lab teams will be getting in touch with you. They'll share the report from this session, but also they will be asking for your help in shaping the future of the programme and looking to understand what are the key business questions that you're still wrestling with around this topic. But for now, I will close the session. So thanks again to everyone for joining us. As we said right at the very beginning of this session, we do really believe that now is the time for businesses to get very serious about building longer term plans for navigating this protracted, ongoing restricted living phase of the pandemic that we do seem to be settling into. So in that context, please do feel free to reach out. We're very happy to provide further support and advice as you develop and evolve these plans along the way. But until then, thanks again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.